Thank you. It's Friday, February 22nd, 2019, and you're watching Ezra Levant's Battleground. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and all others. Obviously, Ezra Levant is not here. He's over on assignment in merry old England. He'll have lots to say when he gets back on Monday for sure. In the meantime, you have myself, David Menzies, and in Alberta, Sheila Gunn Reid as the guest host. How you doing, Sheila?
I'm great, David. I'm so excited that we get this opportunity to fill in for the boss and do our best not to burn the company down while he's gone.
No, it's fantastic. And I think I speak for our entire audience when I say thank you for getting up extra early to do all your farm chores out there in Wild Rose Country. We don't know where we'd be without the farmers of this world as well as the journalists. So good on you, Sheila Gunn Reid.
I feel like you're mocking me. Like, yeah, I feel like you don't believe that I have other things to do except sit on the internet and talk to you.
Wait a minute.
Which I actually enjoy.
Did you make a pun there, Sheila? Did you say I don't believe you have other things to do, as in cow equipment that you have to milk? But oh well. Let's move on, shall we? So Sheila, of course, we can't ignore what's happening in Ottawa. There's so much that we don't know for sure. But with every passing day and with every passing hour, I don't know about you, Sheila, but does Justin Trudeau not look to you like a man who is absolutely desperate to hide something? I wonder what that something is, but that's what it comes across for me, Sheila.
Yeah. This SNC Lavalin thing just gets worse the more the Liberals talk about it. It looks like the AG was pressured not to proceed with criminal charges against SNC Lavalin. And every time the Liberals open their mouths, they change their story. And now Justin Trudeau this morning is advising us that we need to take heed of the civil servants who are defending him, because the civil service isn't partisan or anything. Remember back in the day when they used to wear their Harper Hates Me badges, the PSAC employees who worked for the Federal Civil Service, they wore these buttons that said Harper Hates Me, and now we're supposed to believe that they're just completely nonpartisan civil servants who aren't acting on behalf of the Liberals. They're completely altruist.
And you know, Sheila, speaking of civil servants, what did you make of Michael Wernick, the clerk of the Privy Council yesterday, who took an express train directly to Crazy Town? I mean, I took some point form notes of what he was saying. First, he went very quickly into potential foreign interference into the upcoming election in Canada, basing that on nothing. And I don't know what that has to do with the SNC Lavalin and the AG's resignation. Then he talked about the rising tide of incitements to violence. I mean, is this guy hanging around Mr. Smollett down in Chicago these days? And then he compared a senator's campaign metaphor, namely roll over the opposition, as being equivalent to the Toronto terror attacks last year. And finally, he lamented about reputations and lives ruined. I think he was referring to the Right Honourable Mr. Gerald Butts. But wait a minute. This whole thing was triggered by the resignation of the Attorney General. It wasn't the opposition. It wasn't the media. It was her. So what in blue hell is Mr. Wernick talking about, Sheila?
Well, apparently it was triggered by Scott Bryson resigning, which set the snowball in motion that they had to shuffle the AG, demote the AG, or so the story goes. But I mean, that was the craziest, most partisan speech I've ever heard from someone who's supposed to be nonpartisan in my life. They talk about the swamp in Washington. Holy hell, there's a swamp in Ottawa. I mean, he's invoking like words like assassination. and that there's going to be foreign interference in our elections. You know what? I actually agree with him, but I don't think it's going to be Russia unless it's Russia funding foreign-funded environmental groups to campaign against the Liberals, which they actually, or campaign for the Liberals, which they actually have done in the past. So a lot of the anti-fracking opposition has Russian money in its hands, but, you know, don't tell the Liberals that. But that was really insane. That was like a keynote speech at a Liberal Party fundraiser. It wasn't something that anybody from the Privy Council should have been talking about.
No, it was absolutely egregious. The language, I'm not exaggerating. I think that was hysterical to come up with comparisons to terrorism that happened in Toronto and of course, the foreign meddling in elections without a scintilla of evidence. I mean, I don't know what this guy is talking about. And like you said, it could have been a $1,000 a plate Liberal fundraiser for what was coming out of this guy's mouth. And Sheila, let's not forget that we could get clarity and closure here if the Prime Minister simply said to Ms. Rebold, you're free to speak. Because quite frankly, you know, I'm not a lawyer, but I'm not buying this idea that there's client privilege that's preventing her from speaking. And remember, this was supposed to be a government that was all about transparency and honesty. And remember back in 2015 how we alluded to, you know, things were so mean-spirited under Harper. We're going to be nice. We're going to be nice in sunny ways. And the exact opposite has proven true, not just on this, but on so many other things. And like I said, if she could actually speak honestly about what would happen, we wouldn't be so in the dark now, would we?
Well, and maybe there is attorney-client privilege, maybe there isn't. I'm not a lawyer, I don't care, but it comes down to the fact that Justin Trudeau could waive it in a second. He could waive it in a second. Jody Wilson-Raybould could testify, she could talk, and put this all to rest. The fact that he hasn't waived it so that she could speak, it speaks to the cover-up. And the fact that Gerald Butts is out now, I mean, there is something very big, very terrible going on in the Prime Minister's office. And I don't think we're ever going to know the full extent of it because the Liberals just, they hold too much power. And I don't think there's ever going to be an inquiry into this until there's a change in government.
And I guess the ultimate question is, Sheila, come 8 months from now, does this actually hurt the Trudeau Liberals? I know when I asked this question of Ezra a week ago, he thinks he's going to skate away from this as he skated away from so many other fiascos and embarrassments. If that's the case, I would suggest that too much of the Canadian electorate is just asleep at the switch and that this Prime Minister has more lives than the proverbial cat.
Well, I mean, there's something else at play here, though, too. Like, when you compare what's happening now to the original Libranos and ad scam of, you know, a decade and a half ago or 2 decades ago now, almost, Justin Trudeau has all the progressive liberal journalists on his side. So they'll readily repeat any excuse that he gives. They'll give him excuses in some of their articles about why he didn't do this and speculate why he didn't waive privilege or do any number of things. And that's not something that Jean Chrétien had the privilege of having back in the day. So not only do conservatives, and I guess any Canadian who wants accountability in this country, they have to work against not only the liberal machinery and the lies, but the support mechanisms of the liberal machinery, and that's the mainstream media.
Oh, 100%. And it's going to be worse than ever. And now there's, of course, talk about a potential government bureaucracy that's going to monitor social media to basically cleanse and decide what news is fit for Canadian consumption. I mean, it's taking talking points from China, for goodness sakes, which, of course, we know on the record our Prime Minister greatly admires their form of democracy. But Sheila, Mr. Producer has just whispered in my ear that we have a super chat. I believe that's your job. What do we have, Sheila?
Okay. Also, we need to tell people what the heck we're doing here.
Do you know?
Well, you know, we like to fly by the seat of our pants, but this is Ezra's weekly live show. So you can actually leave us questions or comments that we will read aloud, doing something called a super chat. So you will pay a little bit of money or a little more money if you want your comment or super chat to stay up longer, and we'll read it for you. It's a way to interact with us and pick our brains. But it's also a way to help us pay the bills around here. And David and I get to spend an hour with each other. Since we work far apart from each other, this is a good time for us to bond. So let's read that super chat. Guys, I don't see it, fellows.
Oh, you got to scroll up again a bit there, Sheila. You see,
I see it.
Remember, Sheila, this is why we're co-hosting, because the machine always breaks on me and freezes on me. So they bring you in as the tech expert. So don't let me down here, Sheila.
It doesn't break. You don't know how to use it. That's a different thing. Okay, so we have Just in Time, whom I think I know from Twitter. He gives us $2.79, and he says, with regard to, sorry, Justin, I don't know exactly who you're talking about. Is it our chief bureaucrat? It says he took drama lessons from Trudeau. Proud of your boy, Calgary, YYC. So I'm actually kind of happy to see that there's still some unashamed Proud Boys out there who aren't letting the mainstream media tell them that they're a bunch of racists and decide who they are. So thank you very much for that super chat.
Yes, thank you, Justin. And anyone else that wants to kick in a buck or two, you know, folks, we are not part of the $595 million bailout. We're not part of the, what is it, 1.5 or 1.6 billion the CBC is getting, Sheila. These days, I'm kind of losing track. You know, I know Trudeau just likes to put things on the tab, and the budget, of course, will balance itself. So this is the way we keep the lights on. So if you have it in your heart to contribute whatever you can afford, we greatly appreciate that.
Yeah, and everybody just bear with me today because, as you may or may not know, I work in a bunker in the middle of nowhere in a legitimate log cabin. So if my Skype is a little just bear with me and look away from me and cast your gaze upon David's beautiful face.
Oh well, you're too kind. But you know, speaking of drama queens, in terms of Michael Wernick and his Looney Tunes speech yesterday, we have to talk, I think, Sheila, about Jussie Smollett. Rhymes with Gillette. That's how I remember his name. I don't know what that means, if it means anything. But have you ever seen such an example of public embarrassment and humiliation? And Mr. Smollett and his lawyers are still clinging to the narrative that no, you know, pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. This really did happen. There were these MAGA idiots in Chicago that threw a noose on me and threatened to douse me with bleach. And it is just astonishing, Sheila, because, you know, it seems that the motivation for doing this was that he was upset with his salary. He was worried about getting written out of Empire and his career getting, you know, going into neutral maybe permanently. But he, by this action, has committed career suicide, unless, of course, they make a movie out of this, which they should. And I guess I can think of no better person to play Jussie Smollett than Jussie Smollett. So, but what is your take on this? When are they going to actually capitulate, Sheila? Because, you know, the vision that comes to mind is the Persian Gulf War. Remember Baghdad Bob, the PR ministry guy, who said, oh no, the Americans are nowhere to be seen, and he's actually being drowned out and shadowed by a low-flying American B-52 bomber coming in for a landing. So I've never seen anything like this, Sheila.
David, I need a 12-step program for my addiction to reading Jussie Smollett news. I do. I set a Google alert for this because I'm addicted to reading about this failure. But it's not just a failure of Jussie Smollett or Juicy, or I don't even know how to say his name. And I think that's probably why I like it, because his name, even his name, is a little ridiculous. But it's just a big failure. Like, he thought that being a victim would further his career. The media jumped on it full throttle because, of course, those MAGA people are terrible. And then just like the stupidity of it all. He paid his attackers with a check. He paid them with a check. And he wanted everybody to believe that there were these big white supremacist, gay bashing MAGA people running around Chicago in the middle of the night. I mean, and he did. The best part, though, is when he got attacked, he left the noose on his neck and he kept his sandwich nice. Like,
yeah. You made so many points, and while you were speaking, Sheila, in case people don't know what that footage is, it's the 2 Nigerian bodybuilders that he hired going to a beauty supply shop, I believe it was, and you see them buying all the necessary props, including, if you can make it out, it's kind of under some stuff, the red hat. And I have to say, what phenomenal detective work in coming up with that videotape. The fact that they figured out that these guys might have gone to such a shop. But you're right. That was what I understand tipped off Chicago police really early on, that something was not quite right, that when he came to make his statement, he was still wearing that noose over his neck, because once the bad guys, which of course were about as real as Edward Scissorhands, had departed, if you were victimized that way, the first thing you're going to do with a noose around your neck that you don't want around your neck is take it off your neck. But he kept it on to basically say, look, see what they did. And that's not human nature. So right off the bat, they smelled a rat. And I have to say, as much as national media in the U.S. ran with this without any kind of fact checking or taking a sniff test on this, most of the local Chicago media said, you know what? This doesn't sound right. This idea of these white supremacists driving around in the wee hours of the morning looking for a black homosexual to harass and tell them it's MAGA country of all things. I mean, right from the get-go, this was doomed to failure, Sheila.
Well, and let's talk about how they had to come by their alleged MAGA hat. They couldn't even, like, Chicago is so not Democrat or so not a Republican place that they couldn't even find an actual MAGA hat. They had to buy just a plain red hat from a beauty supply store. And I love the fact, like, Joel Pollak from Breitbart, he calls these two attackers, he calls them Hans and Franz. He calls them Chicago Hans and Franz. Do you remember that Saturday Night Live skit? He's
100%.
These guys are like big, ripped guys. They don't seem like they're all, and no offense here, but if you got entangled in this, I don't think you're all that bright. Like, they seem just like big, muscly idiots for all intents and purposes. Like, if somebody gave me a check and he's like, oh, I don't have cash, do you take a check to attack me in this fake hate crime? Normal people would be like, yeah, no. They go to the beauty supply store and buy this stuff. Can we talk about, too, the name of the hardware store? The Crafty Beaver. Who among us has not been screwed around by a Crafty Beaver?
I know, Sheila, it's almost as though it's the Three Stooges, the next generation, and Jussie Smollett is the smart stooge, Mo, right? And the 2 Nigerian bodybuilders are Curly and Larry, and you can almost see them getting together as a threesome. Now listen, you two, you're going to go to the beauty supply store. See, you're going to get a red. It's just, it's so funny, but the sad thing is that anyone that really is a victim of such a crime, I mean, a lot of people are decrying that this has set the clock back 10 years, because when people do these hoaxes, and we saw it just this month last year, Sheila, with the hijab hoax. I think the only difference is at least the family behind that hoax, once they saw the evidence, they fessed up and they said, yep, it's all a big lie. But like I said, Jussie Smollett is maintaining that this still happened, as is his lawyer. Nothing's been proven. I guess we have to say that. We have to say allegedly. But, you know, here's what I'm curious about, Sheila. If you're the judge hearing this, in addition to the monetary penalty, which I think is going to be significant, how much time, if any, do you give this person?
You won't get any. You won't get any. It will be, oh, he's under a lot of stress. Maybe he'll claim, depression or whatever, childhood bullying, post-traumatic stress disorder for some unproven gay bashing attack in his past. He's going to get concierge treatment through the justice system that a poorer Black person in Chicago probably wouldn't get. But we have several super chats that we're missing.
Okay.
And I have to go through them because, again, that's how we pay the bills. So I could talk about Jussie Smollett all day. My God, I can't even. Anyways, Space Dave 2000 gives us $2 Canadian. Thank you very much. And he asks us, do you still believe the Liberals will win in October? I would not be surprised if they did, but I think we're looking closer and closer to an Andrew Scheer minority, which gives the Andrew Scheer Conservatives time to prove themselves when the government will inevitably fall on a minority. So I think this scandal with SNC-Lavalin does hurt the Liberals, but really not as much as we think it does. David?
Yeah. You know, we've talked about this before, Sheila. I think the last time we made a prediction was more than a month ago, and we were both leaning to a Trudeau Liberal minority. I think that's still within sight, especially if this scandal and others that are upcoming, by the way, he skates away from. And Scheer, you know, there is a real failure to launch here, I see. And I'm talking about with red meat conservatives. I was on Parliament Hill on Tuesday for the Alberta convoy that came in, the pro-pipeline protest. And, you know, you had Mr. Scheer come out to address the crowd. And compared to Mr. Bernier, who had addressed the crowd before Scheer and was given a very warm welcome, there were hecklers to Scheer. And you got to figure the people on the Hill in support of pro-pipeline, this should be his red meat audience that should be eating out of his hand. And I'm telling you, Sheila, there were scattered hecklers saying various things to him. I don't think that bodes well.
No, I think, especially with that pro-pipeline convoy, the Conservative politicians were too tentative for too long. Once they saw that these guys were successful, they were pulling it off. Their message was not extremist, not outlandish, and in fact, mainstream conservative. That's when they stepped on board. And it's funny, they stepped right off board as fast as they could too, as soon as the mainstream media started their inevitable maligning of these people who took their cause across the entire country to Parliament Hill just to get somebody to listen to them. I think they're not fooling anybody, our politicians, when they jump on the bandwagon late. People are not stupid. They can see right through that. But we have more super chats. Just in time, thank you for another $2.79 for clearing up my further question about your earlier comment. That's generous. I should start screwing up the comments more often. We'll get rich that way. So Just in Time says that he was talking about the chief bureaucrat, and then he says Calgary Proud Boys. Okay, well, thank you for paying me to clarify my own confusion earlier. Okay, we've got another one. We've got one from Roll Dak for $5. Thanks, Menzoid, for showing restraint and not unleashing the fists of fury on that beta manager at the Radisson.
Oh, yes. Well, you know, if anyone's missed that story, here's some footage here. Here comes the man almost universally referred to in the comment section as the soy boy manager. There's Efren getting a shot, his camera getting vandalized. This is him, if you heard the audio, calling us rebel crap news. When I asked him, why did you call us that? He grabs the microphone, tries to vandalize that. And now he's saying, I'm calling the cops, and I'm applauding that because when he does so, based on his actions of what he just did, as you just saw on camera, he will be charged with assault. Now, you know, Sheila, this is certainly nothing new to you. Mr. Buse at a women's rally a while back gave you a shot in the noggin, and also we had at the aforementioned pipeline protest in Ottawa on Tuesday, Kean had his cell phone punched right out of his hand. It was damaged. The screen was cracked. Unfortunately, the Ottawa police declined to do anything about it, and that was by a member of Antifa. And we do have, on that particular note, we have a campaign going. If anyone can identify the person that did that to Kean, you've got a $500 award coming your way. The first person, that is, and there's his mug. I don't think it's too hard to identify him. He didn't do the full burqa that most of Antifa tend to do. You see the guy in the green cap and the balaclava? I recognize that guy because he vandalized a truck sign. He ripped it off the grill of a big rig and ripped it apart. And again, that's sort of the dichotomy of Antifa, isn't it, Sheila? They assemble on Parliament Hill to exercise their freedom of speech, which I of course support, because to do otherwise would make me a hypocrite and would make me not understand the meaning of the definition of freedom of speech. But when it comes to other freedom of speech, including just a sign, a non-provocative sign that's pro-pipeline, he thought he was entitled enough to go over, commit property damage, rip it off the grill, smash it in half, stomp on it, and again, in full front of the police that did nothing. And I think that's worrisome. That really bothers me. We spoke to a really nice cop, Efren and I, regarding the Radisson thing, and he said, guys, you know, I can tell you the best we can do is probably send a couple of officers to the Radisson and warn this manager not to do that again. But I know something that Ezra has harped on, Sheila, and I want to get your thoughts on this, is that if these were members of the mainstream media, right, what a different reaction by their colleagues and by law enforcement. For example, a while back, I think it was, I'm trying to remember the details, it was out east, it might have been in Newfoundland, it was a female reporter who got audio bombed with the blanker right in the you-know-where, saying, and there were charges pressed, I understand. Yeah. And I remember here in Toronto, there was a hydro worker that said the same thing to a local reporter. He ended up losing his job. He got it back after several months. But, you know, these were simply audio bombs. What you and I and Efren and Kean have had to deal with is actual physical contact and vandalism of our equipment. I'm sorry, we have to draw the line. We just can't, even if we're not bleeding and bruised and have broken bones, we just can't put up with this nonsense anymore.
Well, and they're getting emboldened. That guy in Ontario, he didn't even do it, I don't think. He was just there when somebody else did it, and he lost his job over it. I mean, if that was the worst thing that happened to me at work on a daily basis, I'd be having a pretty good day. I'm constantly looking over my shoulder when I'm working in the city, in like the progressive hellhole of Edmonton. Out in the smaller regions, I'm fine. I got people fighting over me to carry my equipment. But when I'm in the city, it's a whole different story. You constantly have to be aware of who's around you and who's near you. And even when people are approaching you to thank you for doing a good job, you're instantly worried that they're coming over to punch you in the face. Like that's just the sort of way you have to react to people. And it really shouldn't be that way. So I'm glad that Ezra is pursuing this as ferociously as he is. Utter silence, for the most part, again, about the assault on Kian and the assault on you guys. From the media, who are constantly decrying Donald Trump every time he sends a mean tweet insulting journalists. They say that endangers journalists, and that is putting journalists' lives in danger. When you guys are out there getting shoved around and punched and your equipment broken, and they don't have anything to say because they don't like your politics. They don't believe in free speech. They don't even believe in the free press as journalists. They believe in comfort for them.
They don't. And by the way, Sheila, in case anyone makes any kind of accusation that this is a cash grab by pursuing civil litigation, we know for certain that the precise opposite is true. This is going to cost us by a factor of more than 10 to litigate than what the cash award is anticipated to be. Certainly that's what happened in your case with Mr. Buse. So this again is a principled stand, and it's not about the money. I know everybody that says that in litigation who says it's not about the money, it's really about the money. But I can guarantee you folks, if you saw our legal bills and if you saw the bottom line final award we got from the court, it's a fool's errand in terms of financial enrichment.
Over $30,000. Just to set the record straight, with Dion Buse was our legal bills, and we got a $3,500 judgment. But doing the right thing and making sure that the actual facts are on the record, it's not inexpensive. With regard to Kian, my consolation is that guy is probably in a coma right now, having done more work than he's ever done in his entire life. He mustered the strength of 1,000 soy lattes to strike that phone out of Kian's hand, and now he's in a coma for exhaustion because that's what it takes. He just doesn't have the muscular strength to perform any more work. But we have more super chat.
Yeah. Oh, and by the way, before you get to that, we just flashed up the .com address. Findthethug.com, folks. There you go. Find the Thug. There's his beautiful mug. And first one in to give us the name, you got $500 coming your way.
Okay, we've got one from D. Tyler Dunbrack. He gives us $20 Canadian. Very generous. Thank you. He says, thank you for your courage. United we roll. A little for legal fees to get those jerks assaulting your crew. Thank you very much, Tyler. That's very generous. Every little bit helps. But we have to draw a line in the sand because it really endangers all of us if we don't fight back. We've got one from somebody named MVP, gives us $4. Will you watch Tommy Robinson's media expose? You're darn right. That's actually where Ezra is right now.
That's right.
And that's why we're here covering the shift and bringing you a little bit of chit chat. He's over there right now to cover the expose because we don't trust the mainstream media to do it properly.
And you know, Sheila, on the issue of Tommy Robinson, maybe you and I and Kian and Efren should get him to teach us some moves, because I remember when he was manhandled in Italy by some illegal migrant. I think that guy's still nursing a concussion. You don't do that kind of garbage to Tommy Robinson, do you?
No, but here's the thing. Like, again, with Dion Buse, I say it all the time. I had about 4 inches on that guy, and I'm not a big woman. I probably have 20 pounds on him. Again, not a big woman. I could have tied him in a knot like a pretzel. And some days I wish I did, but then that would have been the story. Rebel media journalist attacks male feminist at the Women's March. And that would have been the headline. So I'm glad I resisted every Albertan urge I had in my body to harm that man, and just handled it the expensive way.
Well, Sheila, you're not a big woman, but to quote a line from the era of disco, you're more than a woman to me. And by the way, folks, if you go to realreporters.com, that's the correct, Mr. Producer?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, .uk, realreporters.uk. Yeah. There you can see we have the image up there, and that is indeed where Ezra Levant is as we speak, over there with Tommy Robinson. It's going to be a whopper. It's going to be great content, and so please check that out.
I can't wait. It's going to be beautiful. We've got another super chat from Roy Ellsworth. Roy, I know you from Twitter. He gives us $10. He says, Sheila and David, you guys know that you are getting popular in the USA. I'm from Canada, but on Twitter, I have Americans who say that you guys are very popular. You know what? I don't know exactly our viewer demographic, but I do know that we resonate with a lot of Americans. I think we're all struggling with the same issues of, you know, government encroachment on free speech and government overreaching into the economy. And I think sometimes we're an example for each other with bad governments and bad provincial and state governments.
Oh, 100%. And unlike the U.S., we don't have a First Amendment, which makes things easier for the likes of the Trudeau Liberals in terms of tinkering with you know, press freedom, whether it's by outright bribing the mainstream media or enacting some kind of legislation along the lines of China or Germany or France to curtail potentially offensive opinions. So yeah, this is the sword of Damocles, Sheila, I think, that is over our heads 24/7 in terms of the political will in a mean-spirited way to shut down the debate, because we know this government and people like Justin Trudeau, they are so petty, they are so vindictive. I don't put anything past them.
Well, and I think our American friends maybe watch Canadian news in the same way that I watch news from the UK or from Sweden, where once you've started going down the road, you want to see where it leads. Yeah. And so we're further down that road, I believe, here in Canada than our friends in the United States are, because of their First Amendment, because of their Second Amendment, two things that we don't have here. And sometimes you look at these other countries and the roads they're going down, it's like a window into the future, and it's a reason to fight harder to defend your freedoms every day. So I think maybe that's also why our American friends have an interest in us. But I'm only speculating. If you have an opinion, you should super chat and tell me.
100%.
We have another super chat from Greg Wade. Gives us $20 Canadian. Fantastic, Greg. Very generous. He asks, how do you think Laura Lynn, that's Laura Lynn Tyler Thompson, my friend, former Christian broadcaster, author, and public speaker, is doing in Burnaby? Now, she's running for the People's Party of Canada to be their first elected MP outside of Maxime Bernier. And she's up against Jagmeet Singh, the leader of the NDP, which I don't know is good or bad. David, how do you think Laura Lynn's going to do?
You know what? I think she's got a tough road ahead of her. First of all, given the riding she's in and given the prominence of Jagmeet Singh. And let's not forget, Sheila, how she has been persona non grata from some debates. It's absolutely atrocious that, you know, because of her viewpoints, she is simply not welcome to go to some of the all-candidates debate. And I think it's a shame. And, you know, but in the big picture, the way I see things, if I'm Justin Trudeau, Sheila, I want Jagmeet Singh to win this seat. I think that if he doesn't, there might be potentially a Patrick Brown-style coup in the NDP party. I don't know who would replace him right now. There's no prominent candidate there. But Jagmeet Singh has been a bust. I mean, since he's become leader, he has failed to resonate. He's only raised, I understand, around $5 million for that party that basically needs $60 million to run an effective federal election. And theoretically, he could still be the leader of the party without a seat, although that'd be embarrassing. But if I'm the Liberals, I want that guy in there, because I honestly believe, Sheila, that if Jagmeet Singh is the official leader of the NDP and has a seat, and he's the horse they're going to run in this election, their support in Quebec is going to crater. They might lose every NDP seat because he is just not resonated in that province whatsoever. And if you're losing all those NDP seats, I think as a Liberal strategist, that's good for the Liberal Party.
Yeah, with regard to Laura Lynn, I think she's in a real uphill battle. She's been blocked from participating in debates by the local media there. They basically want to go radio silent on her because of her past history defending parents' rights. And I would say because she is an open, vocal evangelical Christian. But you make some excellent points with Jagmeet Singh. On the flip side, as a conservative, I want him the heck out of there. And I want somebody like Jody Wilson-Raybould to cross the floor.
Wow.
Over to that's my fantasy football federal politics. Jody Wilson-Raybould leaves the Liberals, crosses the floor to the NDP, has a strong, credible NDP. I actually think Jody Wilson-Raybould is pretty SJW-ish, and she's a better fit for the NDP anyway. Plus, she ticks a lot of identity boxes, and the NDP care about those sorts of things. So that's what I would like to see. As a conservative, we need a vote split on the progressive side. I want him out. I want him out as soon as possible, but I don't think he'll be out if he wins a seat in Burnaby, and I'm worried that he might.
Well, I can tell you, Sheila, I'm going down the list of my fantasy list, and nope, that one about Raybould is not there. And I can't say what is there. But Mr. Producer tells me that we have some super chats that have come in.
We do. So we have one from Fraser McBurney, who asks, why is it that Bell was able to sue Faith Goldie for $43,000 for legal costs and the Rebel can't? I'm not a lawyer, but when we sue these people in civil court, we get awarded costs, and sometimes the costs are not the actual costs that that we've incurred. That's just the way it is. That's just how it worked out in my case. And I really don't know the exact details of Faith's case, but thank you very much for your super chat. David, anything to add?
Oh, I thought you had another one. Sorry.
I do. I have several. We've got one from Bernard Hutchison for $2.79, and he says, agree. Teach these thugs a lesson, obviously referring to the fact that we're going to sue these people into the dirt.
Yeah, well, you know what? It's always an X factor, the judge in a court case, Sheila. But, you know, a quick housekeeping note to any criminals. Don't do your crime on camera, okay? I mean, like, you know, there's he said, she said, and as the saying goes, the camera doesn't lie. And that is their fatal flaw, I think, when it comes to carrying out their acts of thuggery when the video is rolling. And speaking of thuggery,
wait, we got super chats. Don't segue into something else.
Okay,
You're very
I'm
good
sorry.
at these segues, but just hang tight. Okay, we have 4chan for Prez gives us $5. Calls Canada the toxic land of thought crimes. Please pray for Canada to receive freedoms. And there are several exclamation points there, so I know that 4chan for Prez means it. Moving along, £2, I'm sorry, from Spanner Works, says, come on, David, give us a smile.
There you go.
Show us your pearly whites, Dave. Okay, I'm just cleaning up all the super chats. Oh, $5 and a message is retracted. So sorry about that.
What happened?
Would love to read. I don't know. I'd love to read the super chat, but it looks like our super chatter took it back.
Oh.
We've got another one. Canada, the land of jailed for mispronouncing a leftist. That's true. You can get in a lot of trouble for misgendering someone. It's a hate crime here. Charles Bates. Holy moly, Charles Bates. David and I will not be laid off for our performance here today because of you. Charles Bates gives us $50 and says, greetings and support from the People's Republic of New Mexico, because she is, and then it cuts off. I'm sorry, but thank you very much, Charles, for your kind donation. That'll keep the lights on and keep David's teeth pearly white going forwid. David, now you can segue.
What was that part about layoff, Sheila? You made me a little nervous there. I think I'm awake now.
Sorry, there's all kinds of crazy things going on in my ear.
Oh, okay then. No, well, the segue, in what is becoming a trend, I think, I popped open the Toronto Sun, and yet there was another Canadian ISIS bride, her name, Gwen Pullman. This one's really interesting, Sheila, because of the conversion. She was a Mennonite that converted to Islam and then went off to Syria. They always got to go to Syria. I mean, it must be such a beautiful, photogenic country with things to do like, zip lining and going to the beach and whatnot. But, yet again, someone who thought this looked good on paper, kind of like the 1971 Ford Pinto, but in reality is a bust. And guess what? Desperately suffering from buyer's remorse and wants to come back to Canada. And there's several Western nations that are dealing with these women, playing the victim card. Oh, boo-hoo, I didn't know what I was getting into. I was hoodwinked. Sheila, as far as I'm concerned, you went and you joined an enemy of Canada and an enemy of the West, ISIS, and the idea of repatriating you to your home country is 0.0 on my priority list. You made your bed, you sleep in it. I guess if there's children involved, we'll get them over, get them adopted to worthy parents that aren't radicalized and have these fantasies of establishing a caliphate. But I'm sorry, mature people going off to fight with our enemies. You made your bed, now you sleep in it. I have no sympathy whatsoever, Sheila, in having them come back here.
I will get to you in a second, David, but Mr. Producer just dropped me a quick line to say that I missed a super chat. Oh. It's from Just in Time for $2.79. Again, so generous. Yes. Said, Juicy, I don't know, is now claiming an unrelated drug problem. Of course he is. Of course. Of course. You can set your watch to this stuff.
This just in.
Anyway, with regard to that Canadian ISIS bride, I was reading an article that said she converted to Islam, and then she found herself with not much to do. So she just, I'm not a word of lie. She found herself with not much to do, so she took to the internet and started posting pro-ISIS stuff. And I hate when that happens to me. When the internet goes down and I've got too much time on my hands, I just want to join the caliphate and help my husband take some sex slaves. Like, this woman is insane. And now she wants to come home. And a lot of the Yazidi sex slaves who are now free say the ISIS women were as brutal, if not more brutal, than the men in the household, because the women resented them and beat them and abused them because they felt that their husbands were giving too much attention to these Yazidi girls. I don't want this lady back. She went there. I think she's the one that burned her Canadian passport. That's good enough. That's all I need. You don't need to go there, engage in a genocide, be part of war crimes, and then come home and say, it was all a mistake. I was just really bored and I want therapy now. This lady doesn't need therapy. She needs jail time and worse. I
agree. And I can't think of a better prison, Sheila, given the club feds we have here in native healing circles, than to be stuck in a Syrian refugee camp or to be homeless in Syria. I mean, that's worse than any Canadian prison. So like I said, repatriation, no thank you. And and it's not just ones and twos. I mean, I understand there's at least 27 Canadians in this predicament. I did a commentary, I think it's going to air on the weekend, and it's, I call her Amy of Arabia. She's really Amy of Alberta. There was a CTV report about her, and of course she's with child, and she's gone through, in a matter of months, 2 husbands. Who knew, Sheila, that getting involved in the fine art of terrorism usually brings about death? So she's been twice widowed while in Syria. She's now in a refugee camp. She's got a bun in the oven. And suddenly Canada, which she looked upon as being infested with infidels, hey, it ain't such a bad place after all. Can I get those ruby slippers, tap them 3 times and chant, "There's no place like home"? You know what? Like I said, I have sympathy for the child that's about to be born, and that person shouldn't suffer. But as for her, no chance. And you know what got me is that when you had the Minister of Public Safety, Ralph Goodale, comment on this, here's what set my spidey sense tingling. He said that repatriation of these people is not a priority. And I think what he meant to say, Sheila, is, like, he didn't complete the sentence. Repatriation of these people is not a priority in an election year. Because what do you want to bet the moment they're back in? We know what the plan is. Not only do you get repatriated, but you get a meeting in the Prime Minister's residence, like the Boyle family. Remember those cats? Or you get an 8-figure check, like little Omar Kadar, for hurt feelings. So we know repatriation is the very least this Liberal government would do. They just won't do it right now, that they've got some skin in the game, and that this might reflect badly on them with an election just 8 months away.
These women are no better than the ISIS men who went there to fight.
Yep.
They went there well after the crimes and atrocities and the beheadings and the burning alive and the slave trading was already well documented. They went there after to participate. They went in there with open eyes. I feel bad for that baby. I hope it gets snatched up and put in foster care and is given to a nice family where they'll love it and it won't be radicalized against Canadians and against Canadian freedom. But I don't care what happens to that lady. I just care that she doesn't come home to my province. I don't want her here. She went there to enslave Yazidi girls, and she went there with the full knowledge of what she was doing. Even like a bystander. You and I were in Israel. You can go places in Israel where you can see the bombed out places in Syria. You can hear the shelling of the Syrian civil war. It's not like, I heard that they had nice waterfalls and landscapes in Syria, and oopsie daisy, I ended up in the middle of a genocide. That's not what's happening here, and I hope that woman rots somewhere else that's not here.
And Sheila, I think we have a super chat, but before we get to it, one last point on this. What do you think about the double standard and the hypocrisy? At least that's how I see it. When especially these women that go to join ISIS overseas, we've been led to believe, and it's absolutely valid, that men and women are different, but we are equal, and women can, if qualified, can do anything a man can do, and girl power and I am woman, hear me roar, and all that stuff. And yet when they get into some hot water overseas, when it's not a utopia in Syria, they start playing, and their apologists start playing, oh, she's only a woman, she didn't know what she was getting into. I mean, suddenly it's the I'm a member of the weaker sex, right? This staggers me.
They can't really have it both ways, but boy, they sure do. They go over there knowing full well that they're going to bolster the men who are participating in armed combat, be willful comfort women to these men, as opposed to sex slaves. Go there, have their children, be celebrated when their husbands die in martyrdom, and then when things go bad, when the caliphate is falling, which is really what the problem here is. If the caliphate wasn't falling, they'd be happy to be there abusing Yazidis, taking sex slaves, and pumping out jihadi babies. But horrible. Now that the caliphate is falling, they want to come home, and they're claiming to be victims too. They definitely aren't But this is just how progressives think. Yeah. They see these women as victims instead of willful participants, albeit not armed.
Indeed, they are authors of their own misfortune. And Sheila, we have a super chat, I believe?
Yes, we do. 4chan 4Prez says, gives us $5 again. Thank you very much. And says, much love from the USA. Well, thank you.
That's very nice.
Much. Yes. David, do we have any other stories to talk about that we had lined up?
Well, how can we forget the story that you pitched just before we got on the air? And you actually have skin in the game. Ooh, that was the wrong kind of metaphor to use on this one. It's about a tow truck driver. Again, the Saskatchewan bureaucracy of license plate approval, or whatever their name is, he has been denied his plate. This is an ongoing narrative in Saskatchewan. You can't even get a plate there that says meat, M-E-A-T, because it might be offensive to vegans. Sheila, what's the story on this latest potentially offensive plate that the roads of Saskatchewan are not ready for?
Yes. So, David, you'll have to tell me if it comes up on screen, because I can't see, or I won't see in time. But I know a gentleman in Saskatchewan, and as you know, Saskatchewan government insurance, they screen your license plates for things that are offensive. Things like boner, gonads, but also things like udder, U-D-D-E-R, which, I mean, whatever. Dairy farmers are probably offended by that or not. But anyways, and last week or 2 weeks ago, there was a man named Mr. Osman, but his last name is spelled Assman, and he wanted to have that on his license plate. And SGI said no, and he said, that's fine. So he painted his entire tailgate to match the license plate that says Assman. So
love it.
He's the hero we need right now. But my friend Cam is a tow truck driver in Saskatchewan, and he applied to put his name and his business on his license plate. And so he made the application for a vanity plate with SGI, and it says Cam, C-A-M-L-T-O-W, Cam O Tow, as in Cam will tow, camel toe. So some pervert in the SGI offices sent him a letter back and said, sorry, that doesn't pass the test here, and you can't have that on your license plate. And Cam said, I can't believe that you perverts are thinking that way. It's my business, and it's my business guarantee that camel toe. So Cam can't have his vanity plate because of the fun burglars down at SGI.
In a way, Sheila, I kind of have a sense of admiration for SGI on this case, in that they were clever enough to pick up on the double entendre. I didn't think they were that bright, actually. But maybe he can try again with, dromedary digit. Do you think that might sneak by? I'm just blue skying here.
When we were off the air, David claimed that he didn't know what a camel toe was, and he tried to force me to explain it to him, but I knew the little sneaky trick that he was doing. We have another super chat, David.
Okay, then.
We have a super chat, thank God, from Allison Bat. She gives us $20 Canadian, but Allison, I don't see anything. No question, no comment. So if you do have one, I'll just keep my eyes peeled for it. But in any event, thank you very much.
Indeed. Well, and Sheila, the reason I was trying to get you to explain that is, I never thought I would ever be co-hosting a show with you in which I would hear you say such saucy words as boner and udder and camel toe. And my only worry is that I'm not getting charged $4.99 a minute to hear all this kind of stuff like I usually do, am I?
David, nobody pays for porn anymore. Someone's got to show you how to use your phone.
I knew that 1-900 line was the worst investment I ever made, you know. But, well, Sheila, I can see by the clock on the wall, it's the 2-minute warning, as they say in football. Is there any last thing you want to say to our audience before you begin your weekend?
You know what I do? I want everybody to go to findthethug.com, where you can help us find the person who assaulted my friend and colleague Ian Bexey when he was just trying to work and try to bring you the other side of the story, the side that the CBC isn't going to tell you. And while you're there, if you can pitch in to help fund our legal fight that David and Efron have with that deranged, maniacal hotel manager, you can do that there too. It's really for all of us. We have to fight back because it puts a target on all of our backs.
Indeed. You know, I thought the Radisson Hotel was all about hospitality, not hostility. But then again, what do I know? And Sheila, my final thought, I just want to, thank you for pitching in and guest hosting with me. And hopefully Ezra has a safe and very productive trip over in the UK. And I want to thank everyone for tuning in. And I especially want to say an extra thank you to all you generous people that contributed to our Super Chats. That's how we keep the hydro on, and when you live in a jurisdiction like this one, in which hydro is probably the highest in all of North America, we really need it. So thank you so much, and Ezra will be back on Monday, no doubt with a full report, and he'll be back in this chair next Friday, and I guess that wraps everything up. Sheila Gunn Reid, thank you so much. You have a wonderful weekend, and for everybody out there in Rebel Land, you have a wonderful and safe weekend too. Good day.